I grew up in pretty much Project 2025. And when I say that, I mean that all of the policies in Project 2025 were the norms of the Christian nationalist cult environment that I grew up in. In fact, I was even told growing up that they were going to do Project 2025 and that they were going to start it off by overturning Roe v. Wade versus using the Supreme Court, and that is what came to fruition. A lot of deconstructed Christians and evangelicals are truly scared because we grew up in this world of Project 2025, and I would love to share with people how that feels and what that looks like, because we do know what we're talking about and it is very scary. Now, people sometimes tell me like, oh, you were in a crazy version fringe group, and so here's some of my credentials. I have been to 15 plus churches. In fact, my parents actually were part-time missionaries, and so that required us to go to a lot of homeschool conferences, Christian homeschool conferences. It required us to go to conferences in different countries and travel all over the US. We were also heavily involved in a lot of different groups, like with the Creation Museum and Ken Ham, and then I went to a Christian fundamentalist college. And so my family dabbled in a lot of different denominations, like Baptist, Presbyterian, but non-denominational, and I basically saw this line of thinking in everyone. Some of them looked more hip and modern and like more cool, better packaged, but it all had the same hateful rhetoric and beliefs under them. So, first off, with my experience in growing up in Project 2025, J.D. Vance talks about this, and Project 2025 mentions this and how they want to keep the family unit the strongest in America, and that is what is going to help America succeed. And what they mean by the family unit is that they want the male to be the provider and the female to stay home. And this is what I saw in my life. My mom was a stay-at-home mom and my dad was the provider, and he would go off and she was in charge of all the kids, all the chores, running the household, on top of volunteering at church, because there's a lot of labor that's expected of women. Even though they don't work in traditional jobs, they're still heavily pressured to like help in different homeschool co-ops and help in different churches and volunteer groups, and so they are doing so much. My mom also at the same time didn't feel like our financial success was really hers as well. It was kind of like my dad made the money, the financial success was up to him, and even now she doesn't really view it as both of their money. So you have that mentality going on of they'll say like, they'll make it look pretty of like, oh yeah, the woman can just relax and stay at home, but she doesn't feel like she has ownership over their money or their finances or anything like that. Also, being a stay-at-home mom, in a lot of groups they were against birth control, and this is more of a fringe belief. Like, a lot of modern evangelical churches aren't going to be totally against birth control, but they were definitely all against Plan B, and they were all against, a lot of them were against hormonal birth control and any type of birth control. The groups I grew up, there were many women like the Duggars who thought that you should have as many children as God wants you to, and this is very prevalent in Project 2025 as well. They do really want to control women's reproductive rights, and they want to control women's access to birth control. I do believe they are going, and this is just my belief, so I do believe they are going to try to outlaw and ban hormonal forms of birth control, just because they really want women to stay at home, be mothers, be keepers at home. I was constantly told the verse that a woman's place is to be a keeper at home. We would read Proverbs 31, which is a passage in the Bible talking about the perfect woman. And even though literally in the passage she's like working and out of the house and has nannies, we were told that passage is to show that the women are to be in charge of the home. And basically, women shouldn't really be doing anything outside of the home. And with that, with Project 2025, I was homeschooled, and this is what Project 2025 wants to do. They want to dismantle the whole Department of Education, and they want no oversight in what we are being taught. And I heard this over and over again being homeschooled. In fact, there's a huge organization that literally has lawyers to help uphold parents being able to teach their children whatever they want in the USA. And so my homeschool curriculum was Becca, which is one of the most popular homeschool curriculums in the US and a very Christian nationalist curriculum. In fact, in that curriculum, it would say that the Trail of Tears was a great way to convert Indians. It would say that, like, Christopher Columbus was a great stand-up guy. It would say that, it even would say, like, the Holocaust wasn't that bad. And just like crazy claims. It alluded to that Obama was the Antichrist. So just like ridiculous stuff. And that was how all of my education was skewed. So like history, Bible, science. In science, it only taught creationism, and basically all of science, my science courses were disproving that evolution was true. And this is why Project 2025 wants to dismantle the Department of Education, because they want to be able to brainwash and indoctrinate their children into believing Christian nationalist ideals, because that is how you can raise little soldiers for Christ. Even in these groups, in this education, I was told, like, our job as Christians is to make America Christian again, and to, and I quote, this was at a conference, to have more babies than the Muslims are, because the Muslims are having more babies than Christians, and so they're going to be able to make America Muslim before we can make it Christian. This is what these grown men and people who are in Project 2025 are thinking. It is the most hateful, heinous rhetoric. And so I was raised with that homeschool curriculum. And then after that education, I went to the Fundy College, where it was just an extension of that homeschool curriculum. And they, again, really pressured women to stay at home, be moms, or to get involved in politics. And that's where kind of the more politics came in. And there was so much pressure to get involved in our local elections, our state elections, and to run for office. And there are actually a lot of people I know who graduated with me who are now working on Capitol Hill, and some even on Trump's team. And my college had very deep ties to Washington, D.C., and getting a lot of their graduates up there. Same for Liberty University and Patrick Henry. In fact, Liberty and Patrick Henry are actually on the 100 Coalition Advisory Partners of Project 2025. My college was not on that list, but it was like very similar to Liberty and Patrick Henry. So that's all of my education from Project 2025, which is what they're trying to do again. They want homeschooled parents to be able to teach whatever they want, however they want, and in fact, they want to make curriculum that leans Christian right wing, so that way they can maintain their control over the US. So we've talked about education, we talked about family roles. Now we're going to talk about more like legality things of divorce. So Project 2025 wants to ban no-fault divorce. And this is such a common line of Christian thinking, no matter which church you go to. A lot of evangelicals, non-denom, Baptists, and Presbyterians believe that you cannot get divorced. They believe there is only one valid reason to get divorced, and that's if your husband cheats on you. But they would say, even if that happens, you should seek reconciliation and forgiveness before divorce. And there's a lot of stigma attached to women if they decide to leave after being cheated on. And if they decide to stay, they're like really revered in the church, and a lot of women will even leave. Natalie Hoffman, she's an author, she talks about this in her book, Is It Me? She left an abusive marriage, and she was just vilified, excommunicated from her church, and that is quite common. They do not want women to have freedom to divorce. They will always pressure the woman to stay, no matter what. And if you decide not to stay, you will pretty much be kind of shunned, and to the point that you'll probably want to leave to go to a different church. They want men to have all the power. They do not want women to be able to divorce. Even in cases of DV, where women's safety is at risk, I was told that you have to separate but not get divorced. That is what I was told. And I was told, like, marriage is for life, you cannot get divorced. And it's something like, I think it's in the 70 or 80% that women initiate divorce. And what happens in abusive relationships is the victim is always the one who leaves, always. The abuser is never going to leave because they have their supply. And so saying no-fault divorce is really just punishing women who usually are the victims and are usually the ones trying to get a divorce because they're being so abused in their relationships. And so Project 2025 and the Christian world I grew up in did not want divorces. So Next, with that, then we go into some other beliefs of Project 2025 and that were in my own life. And just trigger warning, if you are a part of the LGBTQ plus community, this is going to be very difficult. My church and most of the evangelical Protestant churches in the US are very anti-LGBTQ plus, very, very much so. We wouldn't be allowed to watch any movies. We wouldn't be allowed to know any LGBTQ plus people. They were so vilified in the spaces. Like, I just remember just thinking the worst things about them because of the environment and hateful rhetoric I was hearing all the time. And then, in fact, in my college, they literally would tell us how they can get us out of situations if we're business owners, how we can successfully discriminate against LGBTQ plus people. That was like part of the course in my business classes that I took, was how to discriminate against these people. They say that the LGBTQ plus community is going to make America like Sodom and Gomorrah, which is a city in the Bible that got wiped out by brimstone and fire because they were not being hospitable to strangers. However, Christians like to say it's because they were gay people, and so they blame the LGBTQ plus community for basically ruining America. And this is really, really terrifying rhetoric when you have one group being blamed for the downfall of America, because people are just going to hop on board, believe it, they need a common enemy, and it's really terrifying for what's going to happen to the LGBTQ plus community. In fact, I saw the New Evangelicals do an interview the other day with a Christian nationalist, and the Christian nationalist said verbatim, "I want the LGBTQ plus community to go back into the closet." That's what these Christians want to do. That's what my Project 2025 life wanted to do, and that's what they're planning to do. So if you have any questions for me, I'm going to talk more about my journey on getting out of this lifestyle and getting to where I am now. Thank you so much for listening.